naive or primitive in my notion of prayer. I wrote somewhere that here's what prayer is. I have a story of a chassid who is in New York City and in Grand Central Station and looks at his watch and realizes it's the middle of winter and it's 4:30 in the afternoon. He hasn't done the minute yet. Well, he's embarrassed to just stand up at Grand Central Station without the minute. Looks around and sees a bay of telephones on the wall. Picks up the phone and says, the question of prayer is not, is there anybody on the other end of the line? He may be doing something of great meaning and of great value to his own spiritual life without there being somebody on the other end of the line. Because the somebody he's talking to is right there inside his own soul. And on some level, if he's an educated person, he knows that. Though he certainly has a mythology of somebody upstairs and so on. If you read any of my books, I talk a lot about the vertical metaphor and the internal metaphor as two root ways for understanding the relationship between God and the world itself. We were all brought up in the vertical metaphor. Where does God live? Upstairs. We live downstairs. That metaphor, which is very ancient, goes back long before the Bible. The ancient Near Eastern gods also lived in the sky, as I said. It's a very ancient metaphor. Even if we are no longer children, and no longer think that God must live somewhere on the other side of the sky, it's very hard to get away from that metaphor. Moses goes up the mountain, Jacob goes up the ladder. We talk about somebody being on a high spiritual level. It's also a vertical metaphor. Yes? Even getting high. As well, vertical metaphors for states of consciousness. For more than 2,000 years, that vertical metaphor has competed with the second metaphor, which is the internal metaphor. God does not dwell up, but in. The journey to God is not a journey upward, but a journey inward, to a deeper self, or a deeper level of consciousness, or breaking through the outer mind so you get to a deeper mind. In prayer, I understand us as addressing that deeper self. That deeper self which may reach within to a place that transcends my own ego and therefore transcends my own separate self and binds me to everything else that is. And I'm turning inward to a kind of contemplative universe, placing myself again at its service. But sometimes to place myself at its service, I have to say, but I have this stuff on my mind. I have a sick child. I have a sick wife. I have insecurity about making a living. So I have to carry those things with me. So I take them with me. I take the burdens of my heart with me in prayer. No, I'm not a believer that there's somebody on the other end of the line listening who's going to make it all better. I stopped believing that God would make it all better when I was in adolescence. And though I discovered I was still a religious person, I never came back to a God who would make it all better. If you were just good enough. Both personal loss and growing up in the generation after the Holocaust made it very clear to me that I was far from that kind of religion. And yet I still find myself praying. I even use that book. Though the book is hard for me, I reinterpret that book in automatic pilot. I've been doing it for 40 years, and now it goes fairly smoothly. But it's reinterpretation on automatic pilot. That's what I do. So that even though I say you in prayer, that's the hardest word, the atah, which is the hard part. The yud-hey vav-hey is not the hard part, as I explained to you, but the atah, as though there's somebody over there and I'm over here, how do you do? forgive myself for doing that in order to be able to open my heart, which is what the purpose of prayer is all about.
We'll take 2 more questions because you will have an opportunity. 2, maybe 3. I want to be sure that I let you know. First, Art mentioned his books. Well, his books, especially the latest one, is on sale, or are on sale there, and you shouldn't miss the opportunity to get one in this convenient setting. And to reward you for having paid such close attention, I didn't see anybody sleeping. Not a soul. Naturally, this is a Jewish gathering. Coffee and cake. But we'll take 3 more questions. Yes, the other woman in the back.
So I work in the field of Jewish environmental education. Jewish environmental education.
Great. Wonderful.
For the Pebble Learning Center. And one of the things we strive for is to teach awareness, is to teach radical amazement, to have that be a foundation for connection and then for action. And I often encounter this challenge when you take a group of, particularly of adults, outside and tell them to pray outside, pray with the grass, or even some of the great Rabbi quotes about how every living thing, or every blade of grass sings its own song and has its own prayer. I often, in our society today, encounter this great resistance and tension to true connection with other parts of creation. And I do believe that there was a time in our people's history when that wasn't so true. And I guess I'm curious as to how you would go about teaching that or encouraging people to connect.
Keep working at it. There is, as I hope you understood my message tonight, there is nothing more important or valuable to do. So I'm delighted to meet you, and we are members of the same team in some ways. I had a friend, a fellow student in rabbinical school, who used to teach Hebrew school in the afternoons. And at one point he threw away the books and taught his kids to do nature photography. See it through the eye of the lens of the camera. Look up close. See what's happening. Get them out there at dawn. Get them out there for the first moment of dawn. And to send that celebrate. As the Baal Shem Tov said, the daven shachar after the sun comes out is hardly worth the effort. Shacharit is not meant to be 10 o'clock services, you know. Shacharit means dawn time. It means dawn time. To be aware, I think one of the deepest truths of our tradition is that there is something sacred about those 2 moments of the change of light every day. Sunrise and sunset. The birds know it. And if you want me to define prayer, I might say joining the birds in that chorus. Half an hour before sunrise and half an hour before sunset, they suddenly start singing. So maybe that's something we have to train people to do. Yes, there were times in our history when the presence of nature as part of the wonder of the divine was more there. Some of the psalmists, of course, knew it very well. You read the 104th, the 148th Psalm, so hallelujah, hallelujah, Shemina Shemayim, praise God from heaven, and so on. They were wonderful, wonderful Psalms. There were also times in our history when we were very cut off from nature, when we were very urban people and very bookish people. One of the reasons I like the Zohar and the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman, above almost anything else, is that those were texts that brought the natural world back into the sacred after it had been banished. We have to do that again today. You know, in Israel they did it much more successfully than we did here. Ahavat haaretz, Yidiyat haaretz, knowing the land, going back to the land, going out to nature, was something the secular and the religious kibbutz movements did well. We Jews in the diaspora, not living in the Holy Land, quote unquote, somehow felt that didn't really belong to us. What are we doing out there? Judaism is about book learning, it's about memorizing prayers. It's not about going out to state parks early in the morning or watching the leaves change. And we have begun in this decade to re-embrace that, to refocus neo-paganism and so on. Those people are just too scared to do it. But that is where the future of religion lies, so I'm glad you're lined up there. You had 2 minutes to
Alan? I'm sorry. Mark. Thanks for your time, Mark, from the God Shalom. I was reading Radical Judaism and came across the concept of the one. It brought to mind the modern physics concept of singularity. I was wondering what you thought was the correspondence between your idea of the one, the concept of singularity, and how that might inform us in terms of our religious quest.
Well, I'm not a physicist, and so I don't think I will comment on it too much. But I believe that the search for a single formula that underlies diverse phenomena is certainly something that has been part of the scientific quest for a long time. Whether it's singularity, unified field theory, the idea